They underestimated the storm because you moved like still water. From the outside, it looked like silence, but inside, strategies were crystallizing. The turning point wasn't loud. It was a quiet defiance that reshaped your entire orbit. Without warning, you refused to keep shrinking just to keep the peace. You stopped filtering your essence through the lens of other people's comfort. That quiet revolt sent a signal beyond this realm, one that shifted timelines and set unseen sequences into motion. What they thought was the beginning of their control over your story was actually the expiration date of their influence. While they built networks of whispers and smug alliances, you tuned into a channel they weren't programmed to hear. They relied on surveillance. You relied on spiritual foresight. And the more they tried to trap you with routine tactics, the more they exposed their blind spots. They built strategies from fear. You responded from alignment. They assembled weapons of confusion. You activated clarity. And when they moved in on what they assumed was a weakened version of you, they failed to see they were triggering the exact chain reaction that would unravel everything they built. The game they thought they understood. You wrote the rules in an entirely different language. They assumed your silence was surrender, but it was actually the part where the trap resets itself. What they saw as hesitation was you giving them space to reveal the full scope of their intent. Every distorted version of the truth they offered, every attempt to infect others with slander, every subtle sabotage, they were unknowingly building a case against themselves. And then the balance shifted. Not with vengeance, but with a precision move rooted in clarity. Instead of mirroring their games, you responded with a presence too calibrated for chaos to distort. No smoke, no mirrors. Just the raw gravity of someone who knows who they are and refuses to perform. That choice didn't just silence confusion. It summoned alignments they couldn't predict. Right after that shift, their internal structure began to splinter. The first unraveling didn't come with fireworks. It came when someone from their circle caught a glimpse of who you were without the distortion, and it didn't match the script they'd been handed. That change wasn't accidental. It was the first echo of an unseen intelligence repositioning the entire playing field. And that crack, it widened. They bet on your isolation, mistaking quiet strength for helplessness. So they escalated, louder accusations, bolder moves, hoping to corner you before help arrived. But their aggression became the spotlight. It caught the attention of someone who had been observing, not from curiosity, but from understanding. This silent figure had seen enough cycles to know what real inner light looks like. And what they saw in you broke the illusion completely. The moment their attacks crossed an invisible line, a silent observer stepped forward, not out of sympathy, but out of duty. What followed was not noise or spectacle, but a quiet and calculated dismantling. With the precision of a master archivist, every digital trace was reconstructed. Timelines were cross-referenced, offhand remarks were matched to private records, and inconsistencies began to rot the structure from the inside. While they were busy crafting a mask of moral outrage, their own behavior became the spotlight subject, every scheme catalogued by hands they never saw coming. But the most piercing blow didn't come from what they did. It came from why. The curtain pulled back to reveal no genuine cause, no justifiable concern, only resentment cloaked in moral language. It wasn't principle that drove them. It was the ache of watching someone ascend beyond their reach. The truth was, their discontent was never about justice. It was about the discomfort of watching someone become what they secretly wished they could. Then came the fracture that changed everything. A central figure, their cornerstone, encountered the full record. It wasn't theoretical anymore. It was undeniable. Hidden calls, staged coordination, and manufactured alignment all unraveled in front of them like unraveling wire. What had seemed spontaneous was now clearly rehearsed. Others followed, slowly at first, then in waves. Those once vocal in their opposition began to retract, eyes wide with a new clarity. Some didn't speak at all. Their silence was the confession. But one, once a loud participant, now stood paralyzed by the realization they hadn't been defending a cause. They'd been conscripted into a campaign that mirrored none of their actual beliefs. Their shift wasn't cowardice. It was the first real act of integrity they'd shown in a long time. Their mask slipped the moment loyalty no longer served their control. What followed wasn't subtle. It was a rapid descent into raw hostility. The very person they once leaned on was now their new target, revealing a pattern they'd carefully hidden. Allegiance only mattered as long as it maintained their illusion. The second their narrative was threatened, they turned predator on one of their own. That reaction didn't just tarnish their image, it annihilated it. Elsewhere, the echo reached institutional ears. A process originally meant to interrogate your behavior quietly pivoted into a deeper audit, one that sifted through patterns, inconsistencies, and motives. Where there was once silence, there were now questions. Not casual curiosity, but the kind of questioning that makes power structures shift uncomfortably in their seats. Every record, every memo, every whisper was pulled into focus. And the weight of that evidence was unrelenting. Statements collapsed under scrutiny. Testimonies fell apart when cross-referenced. People who had once nodded in agreement were now distancing themselves, admitting they had been maneuvered. And worse, those behind the claims had unknowingly left behind timestamps, contradictions, and discrepancies that could no longer be ignored. But the most destructive blow came from a discovery buried beneath all their noise. They had crossed a legal boundary they never should have approached. Without authorization or consent, they had begun covertly collecting data, recordings made in secret, files stored under false pretense, all in the hope of weaponizing it later. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a breach of law. And what started as their power play ended with their fingerprints on every piece of evidence that would now be used to dismantle everything they built. Their unraveling won't just echo, it will leave an imprint. The final thread has been pulled, and now the entire facade is unraveling in real time. What once looked like chaos is revealing itself as a meticulously woven conclusion, one that's about to change the entire landscape. A formal gathering has been scheduled under the guise of procedure, but behind closed doors, a verdict waits to be spoken. Those who thought they still controlled the room are arriving with rehearsed deflections and bold entitlement, still convinced that illusion can overrule what's been proven. They won't be ready for what awaits. Because what greets them won't be emotional. It will be systematic. A steady, unflinching release of truth, organized, time-stamped, undeniable. Their attempts to appear righteous will crumble under the weight of call logs, written correspondences, and statements that no longer match their stories. The room will grow colder as each layer is peeled back, and their once confident smirks will collapse into visible unease. The breaking point will be the audio. Their own voices, captured without their knowledge, but lawfully, ethically, laying bare what they tried to conceal. Words meant for whispers now echo in the presence of authority. Excuses they plan to rely on will disintegrate before they can even use them. And the consequences waiting on the table will be brutal in their precision. Dismissals, access revoked, reputations severed from the roots. But it won't stop at institutional fallout. The ripple effect is already expanding. Social circles once anchored in loyalty are beginning to disband. Those who once defended them feel betrayed, blindsided by what's come to light. Conversations are shifting. Silence now replaces support. Familiar voices have grown cautious, distant, even ashamed to be associated. And beneath the surface, something deeper is stirring. This isn't just about careers or relationships. It's about energy. They challenged something they couldn't quantify, tried to dismantle what was never built by them in the first place. What they're about to experience is not karma as they imagined it. It's something older, something cosmic. A force that doesn't just correct, but restores, realigns, and reminds everyone watching that what's sacred cannot be touched without consequence. The fallout they ignited is circling back with precision they never thought possible. Right at the moment they believe progress is within reach, doors will begin closing without sound. People they relied on will grow distant for reasons they won't be able to explain. Projects once filled with promise will begin to disintegrate under invisible pressure. What they sent out in envy and sabotage is returning in amplified echoes, carrying consequences crafted not by human design, but by the exact laws they refused to believe were real. In contrast, your momentum refuses to slow. Every attempt to block you becomes a catalyst. Each delay on their side transfers into sudden progress on yours. The very resources they tried to deny you are now gravitating toward you with unmistakable purpose. There are forces in motion that need no introduction and offer no explanation. What's guiding your path now doesn't require belief. It's revealing itself through result after result. They thought they were watching you. What they didn't know was that their entire effort was being observed by a presence they never acknowledged. Not only was every step of their strategy visible, it was being countered before it could even take root. Every secret plan, every calculated misstep was dismantled by unseen hands before it could mature into real damage. Their spiral is irreversible now. Once the dust settles, they'll be left navigating the ruins of their own creation. Careers in fragments, reputations marked by exposure, and the emotional weight of having spent their energy on a battle they could never win. Meanwhile, your growth won't just resume, it will erupt. Not a return to what once was, but an elevation far beyond your previous baseline. Authority now radiates from you in ways that shift rooms before you speak. And that energy carries more than just charisma. It carries a vibration that silences chaos, that clears the air of hidden malice before it takes form. The people around you can feel it. They approach with reverence, knowing instinctively they stand before someone who has crossed through a sacred fire and survived. What's unfolding isn't just healing, it's repair across timelines. Cycles that enslaved generations before you are collapsing in your wake. Your refusal to submit rewrote patterns once mistaken as fate. The pain your bloodline once accepted as inherited is dissolving under your transformation. Energy once blocked by unhealed trauma is now flowing unfiltered through you, creating openings that ancestors only dreamed of. The path you walk now isn't just personal. It's a corridor carved open for those who will follow behind you. Abundance is arriving in forms that can't be traced through ordinary logic. Financial expansion isn't just happening, it's aligning. Every time you act with integrity, provision multiplies. Each step you take in alignment with your purpose draws support from places you never applied to. You're no longer chasing survival, you're stewarding overflow. And the kind of wealth emerging through you doesn't just serve you, it restores, uplifts, and activates. It's not a reward for suffering. It's recognition of what you've become. Every dimension you interact with has begun to respond to your frequency shift as if the entire landscape is adjusting to meet you where you've risen. Physical environments no longer feel random. They feel curated. The air carries clarity, rooms hold calm longer, and even silence seems to speak on your behalf. People notice something different without knowing what changed. It's not decoration, it's resonance. Wherever you stand, the atmosphere recalibrates. What once triggered dread now activates purpose. Disagreement no longer signals danger but arrives like a coded invitation. Each conflict an encoded lesson designed to extract untapped layers of your strength. You no longer see opposition as disruption but as a signal that evolution is near. Challenges don't chip away at your peace anymore. They reveal how unshakable it has become. Those who thought they were pushing your limits were unknowingly sharpening weapons they'd never be permitted to wield. The energy around you has sorted itself. Those operating in distortion now find your presence unbearable, as if exposed to light they can't comprehend. No confrontation needed. Just your energy doing what words never could. At the same time, those in alignment with your growth begin to emerge, not out of coincidence, but because your signal has become unmistakable. New companions bring collaboration without competition, connection without confusion. And from the ashes of the chaos they started, new pathways are materializing, clear, earned, and perfectly timed. One avenue carries validation from structures once indifferent to you, institutions that now speak your name with a different kind of weight. Another reveals strategic partnerships born from the clarity the conflict forced into existence, doors that would have remained sealed if the storm hadn't come. And then there's the path of legacy, platforms forming to carry the insight you bled for, reaching those who thought no one understood what they were surviving. Their downfall has become more than justice. It's a living parable. Entire communities are drawing from your experience, analyzing how lies collapse under the pressure of sustained truth. You've become an unintentional reference point in discussions about integrity, resilience, and the consequences of weaponized envy. The memory of this trial is no longer just a chapter in your story. It's becoming a manual for others to recognize real power and to walk away from anything that imitates it. What once served as a personal victory is now becoming a public safeguard. The path you've carved is no longer just a record of endurance. It's a blueprint for those who will face similar storms. Investigators will reference your case as a benchmark. Decision-makers will weigh your outcome before signing off on injustice. Even those with intentions to manipulate will hesitate, sensing something in your presence that disrupts their usual approach. Before they can strike, their access gets revoked by circumstances they can't control. Whispers made behind your back return to their originators with uncanny speed, dressed in consequences no one warned them about. Your internal atmosphere has been completely recalibrated. Thoughts no longer pass through you like fleeting daydreams. They arrive fully charged, structured, and ready to move. Insight isn't abstract anymore. It's architectural. Blueprints form within moments, and you don't just receive them, you act. Possibilities that once felt far off now behave like assignments. Your imagination has become a control center for real-world change. The unseen framework supporting you runs on laws your former adversaries never took time to learn. Every strike they launched was recorded, rerouted, and returned with layers of transformation attached. What they tried to drain has been refilled and enhanced. Every broken connection was replaced with bonds that expand your life force rather than deplete it. The most startling part of their downfall isn't just the outcome, it's their inability to explain how it all unraveled. The rules they lived by no longer work in a reality governed by a different order. And now, they're noticing things they can't articulate. Timelines that once favored them suddenly disintegrate. People avoid them for reasons no one speaks aloud. You, meanwhile, move with precision and grace into events that align so perfectly it borders on supernatural. Coincidence isn't the word anymore. What's surrounding you functions more like a system, one that responds the moment you're threatened. And when the dust settles, the truth becomes unavoidable. Those who direct harm toward someone walking in divine assignment trigger sequences that reset the entire game board, permanently. Everything that was thrown out of rhythm has been recalibrated. A force far greater than circumstance has reasserted its structure, and those who tampered with harmony are now experiencing the precision of correction that arrives without emotion but never misses its mark. The gaze that once scanned for your weaknesses has shifted. The eyes on you now are drawn not by suspicion, but by reverence. No longer a target under analysis, you've become a reference point for strength under pressure. What was once surveillance has turned into silent study, and what they're witnessing isn't just survival, it's sovereignty. What happened was never meant to serve only your personal balance. The aftershocks of your restoration have ignited something collective. Others who once doubted their own protection are now seeing it unfold in real time through your story. What they questioned is becoming confirmed. The elevation you're experiencing is pulling others upward, too. You've become the example that breaks disbelief. The shift that confirms the unseen laws are not myths, they are mechanisms. Every lesson written in your scars is now a message being read aloud across the spirit of a global collective. Those who believed they were in control of the board were always playing with borrowed pieces. They mistook manipulation for mastery and assumed destiny could be rerouted by noise. But the blueprint was never in their hands. The entire scenario, from its first lie to its final collapse, was architected to spotlight a single truth. Nothing built against a sacred assignment can stand. What they thought was strategy was actually a countdown. And when the dust cleared, it wasn't just justice. It was prophecy fulfilled in plain sight. But where most stories of conflict end, yours evolves into something more rare. The pressure didn't break you. It activated codes within you that had never been accessed before. Hidden languages started to speak. Timelines began folding into alignment. Your nervous system became a tuning fork for divine instruction. The attacks were never the threat. They were the ignition. And now what has emerged from that ignition is a presence so refined, it functions as medicine. Wounds dissolve in your company. Confusion lifts in your energy field. People don't know how to explain it, but they feel it. You've become a portal, not a person. None of this is random. This entire orchestration was seeded with intelligence beyond comprehension. It required someone who could endure the distortion without becoming it. Someone who wouldn't break, but transmute. Your adversaries didn't derail your purpose. They accelerated it. They didn't silence you. They authored your arrival. The evidence of your rise has become a living echo, moving through time and space, correcting false narratives and calling others into their own revelation. What was meant to erase you has introduced you to the world. And the story still isn't finished. It's only changed format, from battle to broadcast. The compensation arriving now is not merely timely. It's precise, accelerated, and undeniably engineered. Returns are showing up from directions you never invested in. Plans you scribbled down as ideas months ago are being funded like legacy ventures. Streams of income are emerging from what were once dead ends, behaving as if reality itself is catching up with the truth of who you are. It's as if the system behind the scenes made a note of every delay, every injustice, every stolen breath, and is now issuing payment with interest. The very institutions that once ignored your presence are recalibrating their approach, now offering access you were once denied, because the cleansing born of conflict forced them to see what they previously overlooked. The first outreach will arrive not from flattery, but from recognition. A learning institution will want to chronicle your experience, not just for study, but for training. They'll see in your path a resilience that deserves replication. Another door will swing open from a media outlet seeking to amplify your narrative, not for ratings, but for awakening. And beyond them, a new invitation will rise from a place of strategic influence. A group seeking your insight on how to restructure broken systems, not through theory, but through lived knowledge they never had access to before. What's taking root within you is a kind of clarity that borders on supernatural filtration. You'll feel falsehood approaching before it even shapes into words. Masks will fall without your prompting. You'll know when someone's praise is really envy, when guidance is a performance, when someone's alignment is simply convenience in disguise. You're being upgraded not just in status, but in sensory depth. What used to confuse you now reveals itself instantly. The trials weren't distractions, they were downloads. And now, you've become untrickable. Waves of transformation are breaking across timelines you've never even touched. The frequency of your breakthrough is traveling fast, reaching others who've been walking alone, doubting the relevance of their own struggle. They're watching you not out of envy, but to recalibrate their hope. Your win has become a lens. It's proof that the laws of spiritual symmetry are not abstract, they're functional. And those who once whispered that justice was a myth are now retelling your story as confirmation that higher order exists. And now, even the ground where the war once raged is changing. The place where tension lingered in the walls now feels breathable. The atmosphere is no longer thick with manipulation. That old ecosystem, once engineered by force and fear, is being rewritten one decision at a time. New standards are taking root. Conversations are shifting. Environments that once tolerated toxicity are being restructured by your absence. And somewhere within that shift, even those who stood silently are beginning to speak up, not just because the weight is gone, but because your victory gave them the permission to feel again.